I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. I'm tired.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
All right, here we are. Welcome to the John Dennis Report. You can find us on Twitter at Real John Dennis, Instagram Real John Dennis, and YouTube John Dennis Report. Actually, we have a Facebook. I think you can go to John Dennis Report on Facebook as well. As you know, I am running for Congress. I am. Oh shoot! I got to release that video. I got the first draft. So in other words, you can find us. The big following on Facebook is on John Dennis for Congress, which is a, I don't know, what do we have, like 85,000 people on that one? 88,000, yeah, we've got a bunch of people following us there. And so, so join us there. Used to have a lot more people on Twitter, but in the great purge that happened, the great deplatforming back in January, I lost, I don't know, a bunch of people in one day. I was playing golf that one afternoon. By the time I got off the course, it was about a 3.5-hour round. I lost 3,000 people. And overall, I've lost like 35% of my people on Twitter, whatever. It seems to have stabilized, but who knows? I mean, I think, we're all on borrowed time if we're in the wrong part of the political spectrum on these social media sites. And what's funny is I don't hear anybody on the left talking about, this massive deplatforming on the left. And since they control the media, you'd think you'd hear about it. If there was if what happened to the right on that day in particular, that day back in January, and since since Election Day, if that had happened on the left, you would never hear the end of it. So many people have lost, tons, high percentages of followers. In some cases, hundreds of thousands of followers if you have big accounts. People have been, knocked off of accounts. They just had their accounts suspended permanently. Tracy Beans, what was Tracy Beans saying that could have been so controversial that she had to go? I mean, just so many people. It's crazy. Some of them I've just even forgotten. It's sorry to say that because, you sort of get left out if you're not, following somebody on social media, or if you're not being followed on social media. So in any event, those are where you can find us. One little tidbit today, I've been in an article in the San Francisco Chronicle. It's not about me. They just pulled one of my tweets off. There was a police commissioner who I and other people had a bit of a run-in with a couple of weeks ago, because a guy who moved to San Francisco from Kansas, was talking about his, exit in an article in the Chronicle about how he was moving to Dallas because San Francisco was too expensive and it was crazy dangerous. Like, he was seeing all kinds of crime in his really high-end neighborhood, and he was afraid to go out on the streets. So he moved to Dallas, and he's paying, about a third of the rent that he was paying here. And in any event, the commissioner gave him a hard time because the guy was complaining about, paying $17 for a salad, conveniently leaving out that the guy was actually leaving because he was terrified, and this police commissioner was mocking him. So in any event, this police commissioner then was making kind of a subtle point about there was an arrest and a gun was taken away from a young person in a tough neighborhood. And he made the point that, you can cheer on the fact that this kid had his gun taken away, okay, but, guns have been known to save lives of kids in neighborhoods. So it's a little more complicated story. And he got bombarded by people from the left, specifically a couple of supervisors, one of whom I ran against a couple of years ago, who I rather like, but she's made her name as a gun advocate, anti-gun advocate, and she and other supervisors are calling on him to resign. I just made the comment that what the guy said was a simple truism, that guns frequently save lives. Think about all the crime that's committed with guns. Think about all the crime that's prevented by having a gun. So in any event, that's put me in the San Francisco Chronicle today. Every time I get a notice, I'll try and let you guys know about that. Okay, so let's get into it today. Let me just pull some stuff up here. Mario, go ahead and pull that article up. What do we got here? And then we're going to go over here. All right. Can people see that?
Yes, they can.
Oh, good. Okay. So, all right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about general election integrity. And it's in light of this H.R. 1, which the House passed last night. Now, it was passed with all kinds of wild provisions. Federal funding of elections and, addressing things that people are concerned about ostensibly on the surface, but in reality not really addressing them because it's all from a Democrat point of view. Now, it's from a Democrat point of view because look at the headline over here on CNN. House, controlled by the Democrats, passes sweeping election bill that would counter GOP efforts to restrict voter access. Okay. This is like a common thing. They just keep pounding and pounding, Republicans on this. I don't know any Republican that wants to prevent anybody from voting. They keep saying this, and I got hit on Twitter with this a couple of weeks ago saying that, Republicans are trying to keep people from voting. No, we're not. We're just trying to have rules that tighten it up so that we don't expand voter fraud. All we want to do is have fair elections. The reason why all those people showed up on January 6th wasn't because Donald Trump told them to show up. Well, maybe a couple of them. But the truth is that those people showed up because they feel like there was no integrity in our election. They don't trust the outcome of that election. The outcome of that election, I'm sorry to say, makes no sense. In my opinion, it just doesn't make any sense. We have this guy stumbling around the White House who can't take a question. His people won't let him take a question from the press. They shut down. Did you see that video yesterday where they shut him down when he was going to take a question from the press? So, to any reasonable mind, this election makes no sense. And here we have CNN saying that the GOP wants to restrict voter access. I don't know. I just think those people showed up on January 6th, not because they wanted to restrict voter access, but because of they felt like the whole election was a scam. So anyway, here we are with this H.R. 1. And what's interesting is ostensibly has a voter integrity clause, but I want to pull before I get into the specifics of what's in this thing, I want to take you on a walk through. The to how to register to vote in California. Can you pull that up? Okay. Now I'm going to take control. I can do this, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay, and I got to do it on this computer?
Yes.
Okay. So guys, let's take a look at this real quick, and I'm going to walk you through how to do this. And you're going to see how easy it is, at least on a small scale, to commit voter fraud. And just if anybody's watching from law enforcement, I'm not going to submit this. I'm going to just put this out there, and I'm going to not hit submit, okay? Because I'm not interested in committing voter fraud myself. Okay. So here's what you do. You fill out, I am U.S. citizen, 18 or older. I forgot. I'm going to put in some fake stuff here just because I don't want you guys to know where I live. I only want you to know where I live if I invite you to the party. Okay. So here we have it. I'm going to put in John Doe, and then I'm not going to give you that, and I'm going to give you. And we'll say, how's 1980? If I could only have those years back. Yeah, I was born in the U.S. Now, let's say I don't have a driver's license and I don't have a social security card. Okay? Yeah, I'll give you my ethnicity. Okay? And we'll say English. And let's say this is the address. You can see where I live there. 175 Green. 3. This is a building I used to live in. I don't know if that's the apartment number, but I'm just making this up. Okay. 1, 2, 3. And the county is San Francisco. All right. So we do all this. And I'm going to go with no party preference and go next. Now, by the way, earlier on, it said that you may, when you get this, you may need to show an ID the first time you vote. So I want to say something to the people. I was online the other day having a discussion about voter ID, and I was just saying about this whole voter integrity thing. And I was saying that what Republicans want is for people just to show up with their IDs. You know, you can't get on a plane. You can't open a bank account. You can't get a credit card. You can't go to buy liquor at a liquor store. You can't do a million different things without an ID. The least you could do is just prove you are who you are when you go to vote. Is that too much to ask? And these guys were like, no, it's a poll tax. You can't, force someone to pay for something in order to vote. And, there's some validity there. I'm okay with that. But if it's a poll tax, now get this is really important. If it is a poll tax to force someone to show an ID, to force them to pay for an ID and show it when they go to vote, why isn't it a poll tax when they go to register to vote? You have to show ID then. I don't get it. Anyway, so here we go. So here's the thing. So now let's say I don't want to show my ID. I'm in the fraud business, by the way. I want to get my ballot by mail before each election. Yeah, and I'll take the state voter guide, and yeah, I'll take the county voter guide. I don't want to be a poll. I don't want that. Nobody helped me fill this out. You hit this, and then you hit next, and then this is the point where you submit, which I am not going to do because I do not want to commit perjury. So if you see down here, this is where it says, so I'm not going to do those things. I'm doing this just for instructional purposes only, okay? So anyway, the point is let's say I have access to someone's address. I could make something up. The mail gets sent. I can go to somebody's computer, use someone's phone, go into a FedEx office and use their computer, and fill this out and have this sent to an address. And if I have access to that address, I could use a PO box and have a few of these sent. And if you do it on a small scale, your chances of getting detected are actually pretty low. So while the Democrats are, trying to change federal election law on a federal scale that's dubious in terms of its constitutionality, the one thing that they're not fighting for is for voter integrity and electoral integrity on the state level. There's no call for ID. What's to prevent this ballot from being sent out and this person from doing this? So I'm going to close this out. You can pull that off there. So at least, like I said, on a small scale, the chances of someone getting caught doing that is pretty slim. I mean, I don't see that happening. But I just want to go back and say that whole poll tax argument is completely BS, because if it weren't a BS, by the way, what they've got in this HR1 is they've got something that we have in San Francisco. Now, I'm sure Nancy Pelosi inserted this herself. But what they are offering, get this, is that congressional candidates can have all of their donations for less than $200 matched 6-to-1 by the federal government, which is very similar to a system that we have here in San Francisco. And the way to pay for that, they said, is by charging banks who commit voter fraud a penalty of 2.75%, and that penalty will be earmarked to pay for the matching funds program. Well, I don't even know where to begin with this, but first of all, what happens if the banks don't commit fraud, and there's no 2.75%? It sounds to me that like you're going to create a situation for the banking regulators, whoever's responsible for sussing out these voter fraud, these bank fraud sort of crimes. It seems like they're going to get pretty predatory if the banks are actually running clean operations, and if there's not enough money to pay for the 6-to-1 matching funds. So that's problem number one. Number two, 6-to-1 matching funds. Let me ask you this. Why don't they take that same fundraising scheme and use some of that money to guarantee that anybody who can't afford an ID, that the federal government will pay for it in order to ensure election integrity? Why aren't we raising funds for that? If it's a poll tax and it's unconstitutional, which I don't buy in the first place, mind you, why aren't the Democrats trying to find money to earmarking it for for funding people who can't afford voter IDs? Even if we have to pay for the driver's licenses, what are driver's licenses in most states? $50, $100, whatever it is, and it's for people who can't afford it. Rather than give out matching funds, why don't we do that? Now, let me just tell you something. The matching funds thing is such a scam. It is an encouragement. I mean, they're basically encouraging people to commit fraud. Can't you imagine in some tight-knit communities, just some tight-knit communities, everybody goes and decides to kick in $200. They get 6-to-1 matching funds, and then the candidate, who's not a real candidate, takes the money and finds a way to reimburse the people who gave him the $200. You don't see that happening. You think they're going to be able to? You think that the Federal Elections Commission is going to be able to police that? The Federal Election Commission is there are people committing all kinds of shenanigans across the country as it is right now. Imagine all the candidates, the scam artists who are going to crawl out of the woodwork to take advantage of the 6-to-1 matching funds program. That's in H.R. 1, which the House passed late last night. Now, I think it's probably going to face some resistance. It's going to face a lot of resistance in the Senate, and I would hope that these provisions would be in there. These provisions would be, worked through, and that senators would fight, to remove them. But it is a massive ripoff. We have it here in San Francisco. It actually has not led to. We'll be fair. We've had some dodgy candidates here in San Francisco, but it's a small place and it's a very limited scope. You start doing this on a national scale, forget about it. We have scam candidates running right now in tons of races across the country. I had one in my congressional race in 2020. Put 6-to-1 matching funds into that? Forget it. Oh my God. It's going to be a nightmare, a national nightmare. And again, no money earmarked for providing voter ID for people who supposedly can't afford it. So in any event, this is a big issue, big concern. And, it's going to continue to be a problem. And it's really, possibly the reason why the Republicans lost Georgia. Because you have so many people who feel like, why should I turn out to vote if the whole thing is a scam and a fraud? If they're just going to dictate who our politicians are going to be, what's the point of doing that? So anyway, that's what isn't being addressed in H.R. 1. It's all a Democrat pet project list. It's all set up to entrench them and to benefit them. Keep in mind, Republicans, we have some tough guys on the Republican side. Some guys who don't. What's that noise? Anyway, we have some tough people, but I think I think it's a fair assessment. Republicans largely are ideological. They are trying to use politics to ensure that the country stays together, that we have a fair system for people, then people's rights are protected. That's generally what they're about. The Democrats see it in a much, what I consider, harsher light. They see politics as a means to get power. They want power. They want more power, as much as they can get. They don't care about your rights. They don't care about that. They'll, mouth platitudes about it, but they're real about your rights. But what they're really concerned about, what they're really after, is power. So this bill is an exemplar of that. You can see it crystal clear what their intentions are. Again, notice there's nothing in there to protect voter integrity, election integrity. So anyway, all right. Let me finish up here. I guess I'm going to just make a couple of quick comments about Andrew Cuomo. I talked a little bit about him yesterday. I find I talked about, my thoughts about who went after him. Talked to a guy yesterday. My sort of dark horse theory is that, well, I think it's coming from the Democrat side. And some people have said, it's Kamala Harris might be the person who's leading the charge in that, to eliminate Cuomo as a potential opponent in the Democrat primary in 2024. I think he was already wounded by this nursing home scandal. I think that's not likely. I think maybe the Clintons could have been involved. That's sort of my dark horse theory about that. The Clintons and the Cuomos have had a uncomfortable relationship, an alliance for decades, and there's maybe something that they want from Cuomo. They want that seat, whatever it is. They could be in the middle of it. Someone mentioned to me that it's possibly Roger Stone who went after him as retribution for all the bullshit that they put Roger Stone through. But it has not been determined yet why it is Cuomo was thrown under the bus, because people knew about these allegations going back a long time. This is not new stuff. If you look at that cringy shtick that he was doing with his brother Chris on CNN, they were like, "Oh, he's single. So I hear you're single. Yeah, I'm single and ready to mingle. I'm the love gov." I mean, all this stuff. Disgusting. It's so cringe-inducing, excruciating. I couldn't watch it. But what was in there? This whole thing about him. There's always something weird when sex comes up in politics. It just should never come up. There should be no flirting going on. It's just not the right thing. And when your brother is saying that you're single, this isn't. I mean, he's the governor of New York. He's not even. If he was the former governor of New York, maybe that would be okay. But as the current governor of New York, it's just totally and wildly inappropriate. And from that point, you knew that there was something. If this is on the top of this guy's mind, this is what he's after. Listen, when you're in a position like that, if you become single, you get divorced or whatever it is, you have every right to pursue relationships, but you've got to be unbelievably careful about it so that you're not compromised, number one. And number two, you have to be unbelievably discreet. And here he is on CNN on a primetime show with his idiot brother talking about, I'm single, I'm ready to mingle, the love gov. I mean, what is he thinking? And so the fact that he thought it was a good thing and it was an okay thing to go on CNN and talk about that, you can only imagine what he was doing off camera, behind closed doors. So none of this should have been a mystery to insiders. They all knew this was going on for a while. The only question is who actually exposed this and why? What is Andrew Cuomo? What does he have that somebody else wants? What is he blocking that somebody else wants to get their hands on? And one other thing, I just want to make a point. I've mentioned. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I talked about this on Twitter. When I first moved to Europe, it was not long after I moved to Europe in early 1994. It It was not long after the Ceausescus, who were running Romania with an iron fist, where Nikolai and his wife Elena were given a quick show trial when their reign and their regime collapsed. They were marched out to a courtyard and shot, in an execution by a firing squad. And the Ceausescus were unbelievably vicious, evil people. They did terrible things. If you just look them up, do searches, read articles, do some Wikipedia stuff. But what was crazy about it was that Elena Ceausescu, as she was being marched into the courtyard, was barking orders at the firing squad, as if she was still in charge. I mean, she was, her hands were tied, and she's facing a firing squad, and she's still acting as if she's in charge, like she's so entitled, right to the last second, to the bullets hit her. It's a remarkable thing. And there are some of these folks who are in politics, who hold positions, who have this kind of sociopathic kind of approach to things, and entitled, but like entitled on steroids sort of thing. You get the same sort of vibe from Nancy Pelosi, right? That's what you think of when you think of her, this sort of arrogant, entitled, personality. And when somebody like Andrew Cuomo is on TV talking about being the love gov and single and ready to mingle and that sort of thing, it's that same. Those people are all cut from the same crazy kind of cloth, and they are the absolute last people that you want in elected government. So that's one of the reasons why I run against Nancy Pelosi, why I challenge her. Because she doesn't like to be made fun of, and she doesn't want to be challenged on anything. I try and do both in the process of my campaigns, because hopefully it creates some level of connection to reality, that she's got to realize that she's, that people are watching and we care about what she's doing, and that we're not going to, just simply let her walk away and get away with whatever she wants. And so it's good when somebody like Andrew Cuomo gets his comeuppance, because we don't want these people who have this sort of bad gene running our governments. So anyway, on that note, we're hoping that this leads to an early exit from the governor's office for the people of New York from Andrew Cuomo, and hopefully we'll see Nancy Pelosi retired in one way or another in 2022, hopefully at the hands of a loss to yours truly. And on that note, let's end the John Dennis Report today. I want to thank you all for joining us. Please follow us again on John Dennis Report on Facebook and on YouTube, Real John Dennis on Instagram and on Twitter. And we will see you Monday. And if we get this video, I've got the first draft sitting in my inbox. If we get this video up and running, we'll release it. So keep an eye on our social media accounts for the release of the video. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good day.